It's time to step out now into cosmos, into mythos, into psyche. My dear listeners, welcome back. If it's your first time, welcome. And this show here is a solo one, a show for Hermes that I'm recording on Easter of 2019. It's a show that I'm dedicating to him for all he has taught me and also us along the weird road. It's going to be an interdisciplinary show, mainly philosophical, but also placing us safely in the excited grounds that I feel Mercury is reading from at the moment, being he is now in Aries. He's left those waters that seem to have grabbed a lot of folks, brought them out there in the riptide, lost without the stars. But it's different now. He's with Chiron and also Venus as well. There's a little bit of a lineup that we will indeed be exploring in this show, trying to translate the deep palaver that Chiron is offering to the two of them. And so it is my prayer then that there is good medicine in this show for you, and that there's a few new insights into, say, talking about the planets. That, for example, we are who we invoke. That if it is Christ that you're celebrating on this day, this resurrection day, then it is Christ that is found on your altar and inside of your heart. Not a bad fella to choose. But whoever we invoke, in a way we become. And it's in rituals like this where we can really change cycles, I think, as well. Kind of snip the cords and the lines that hold us from the ancestral past. And so I want to begin the show by doing such a thing. Got a little frankincense filling the space. That in the background is Phaser, F-A-Z-E-R, this jazz fusion group that I've been enjoying a lot lately. Check them out, support the work. And what I'm going to do is read a bit of a remixed Orphic hymn. So I've added my own panache to it. And we say this to invoke Hermes, because he is, in a way, the man of the hour, this podcast. Hermes, draw near and lend your universal ear to this song. Eternal student and teacher of the mysteries, ruler of all that is interesting, with heart almighty and prudent of mind, celestial messenger of various skill, whose powerful arts changed lives. With winged feet you arrive at the scene, O friend of man and prophet of perfect discourse. Great life supporter, to rejoice in you is our pleasure and duty. With powerful language to explain, whose hand contains a blameless, peaceful rod, which heals all miscommunications and understandings. A various speech, whose aid in great works we find. Dire weapon of the tongue, which men and women revere. Be present and equip us with words, with the beauty of the birds. Assist in our works, conclude our lives with peace, give graceful speech, and memories increase. Praise Hermes. So these Orphic hymns, it's a collection of 87 short religious poems composed in the late Hellenistic times. And they're based off the beliefs of Orphism, a mysterious cult, the philosophy that claims their descent from the mythic hero Orpheus, a man who, of course, loved Mercury deeply. Mercury/Hermes, throughout the show, I might be slipping by saying Hermes often. It just comes out of my mouth easier. Mercury is a little bit more chunky. So don't be confused if I'm saying Hermes cycles or Mercury cycles, the same in the way that the podcast is going to go. So it's Resurrection Day, my friends. Respect to those who have shown us the way through this death and rebirth cycle, like Adonis and Attis and Dionysius, Osiris, and of course Jesus. They're all with us today, along with Hermes. They have shown us the wisdom of returning to Earth for the sake of humankind. And so it's good to ask ourselves, what is it that's resurrecting in you right now? From something maybe that you let die last fall, something stripped from you consciously or not. Maybe it was that Venus retrograde in Scorpio, and something now is coming out of the fertile soil. I assume most of us, I know not all of us, are up here in springtime. So what is it that is being resurrected today? The moon, Scorpio as I record this, in the wake of that beautiful anoretic Libra full moon we had on Friday. And so I ask again, what is coming to life again inside of you? What is it? My friends, if at any point during the show you notice your attention focusing on your ears pricking up a little bit because something is being said that truly resonates with your heart and where you're at, consider going to patreon.com/Adam Summer, and you can be a part of this journey with me. I'm going to start doing more of the anecdotal storytelling on the patron only there, trying to withhold a good majority of that to these public podcasts, but also circles, lectures, things like that I'm not going to release to the public are all there at just the dollar level, but also to get 50% off the classes every month, be a part of the parlor. There's so much that is happening in the blooming community that is Patreon. And there's also one little personal share I will offer, and it relates to this. I'd say it's been a pending vision for a really long time, and it's kind of like this. I mean, there's a little hungry dragon, I think, inside of all of us, and inside of me, it's been there for the longest time. A little fledgling, I'm sure that all of us can relate to, and it's starving for more time to create, to dream, to write, to read, and in my case, podcast, and bring community together through these retreats that I now have the wonderful privilege to do. And so what I've been praying for years is clarity around how I can nourish this little dragon. And so one of the first big moves I'm going to be making around this is this summer, I'm going to be spending it in the West Country in Dartmoor in the UK. And it's through the grace of this incredible ally and patron to put me up and like have a writer's cabin in a room. And it's just going to be amazing to be able to go so deep into this work. And it's something that I've wanted for a very long time, but the logistics of it is really challenging because of client work, because of teaching, because of keeping this whole thing together. And thanks to Alejandro Jodorowsky, I was gifted a unique insight into maybe how this can be done. And this is my thought. And it goes like this, that Jodorowsky, if you don't know who he is, he's the incredible surrealist cult filmmaker, but also many other things. As one of them is he's a tarot reader, and he wrote an amazing book called The Way of the Tarot. In the introduction, he talks about how he's never ever charged for a tarot reading. And I think that, of course, is a beautiful thing, and I think it would be amazing if we all could do that. But we live in a world where, of course, we have to make the monies. And for him, I think he's been able to do it because, of course, he probably has a lot of the monies from his films and other such things that he has done. And in reading this, like energetically, it popped out. Like that would be so cool to offer more of that as service or seva. How could I use the Patreon to incentivize such a thing? And so the idea at the moment, and I'll create these little goals along the way, is that I'm currently $500 away from meeting my first pledge goal ever. And I've been running this Patreon for like 2-3 years. And if we can reach that goal, and again, it's just $1 or maybe 5, 10, whatever you're inspired to do, what pledges you want to be a part of in the community. When we get to that level, I'm going to offer yet another free reading a month. So I already offer one for all patrons, and it's like a raffle we do every month. But if we can get to that goal, then I'm going to offer 2, and then I'll create another goal and another goal. And I foresee this, if it works moving into the future, that there'll come a point where I'll be able to give like 12, 20 even free readings a month if the creation of the podcast and my writing and everything like that feels sustained. If I can keep myself alive through this work, then that would be my way of saying thank you and being of service to all of my dear patrons. And so if this is something that interests you, if you want to be a part of this beautiful experiment, go to patreon.com/Adam Summer. Also, if you don't care about that, but you do want to leave a review or a star, it helps the podcast just as much. And you can do that on iTunes. And it's also on your podcast app that most of you are listening to this show on. So that's that. Mercury, Hermes, like mentioned before, is now in Aries and has passed Chiron already to this point, and Venus is now on her way. And so when you look at the chart of this moment, which is the 21st of April of 2019, you can see that Mercury and Venus are flanking Chiron. That one of them has left his cave, and that's Hermes, and the other is headed toward it. And Mercury also being a morning star, as Rudyard would call it, Promethean direct. There's this excitement and engagement with the world, the lineup or stack of books and all the burning questions that we have. It's novel territory in a cycle. It's very young, we can say, and it's fierce curiosity of mind. It's like a blazing arrow or a quiver full of questions that wants to get to the heart of the mysteries that we are pondering. And I think always with Mercury, it's not to get caught in the details. And this is especially true when Mercury is in Aries, that to get ahead of ourselves or to start speaking about something when it hasn't been cooked properly within ourselves, but to actually have a practice around taking that extra moment, taking that extra breath, actually listening, continually asking questions and listening. And there is some deep wisdom, some good medicine that Chiron gave Mercury, pretty much in unison with the full moon that happened last Friday. That's when it was occurring. And now Venus is on her way, and Mercury is going to be in this phase, the Promethean direct or the morning star phase, until the end of May, where he'll disappear again, but this time moving to the other side of the sun in direct motion. And this is also when he's moving the fastest, when Hermes is on the other side of the sun. And it could be seen in late May as a mercurial full moon. That this cycle, we know, at least if you've been tracking my work, began on March 14th in Pisces. And so by tracking him throughout the cycle, we're actually tracking that intention. We're tracking that moment and how it is fractalizing out into our lives. And these cycles last around 116 days. And so the reason why I am so interested in these cycles is because, to me, every planet is not just an entire universe, but it's also a university. And when we apply that psychology to Mercury, I mean, he brought us astrology. He brought us alchemy. He brought us everything that we are interested in, our capacity to communicate it, to make symbols, to point fingers at the moon, and also the true nature of the great mysteries. And I think what Mercury is always trying to do is unwind and unravel all of the knots in our understanding to get us back to the one mind, to get us back into alignment, really, with the great mystery. And so in working with these cycles, hopefully the information that is flooding in and hopefully the topic that has claimed you during the phase is getting you closer and closer to remembering. I think that is probably the meta truth of all planetary cycles and even working with the chart in general. But when we're talking about a Mercury cycle and tracking him, it's working with the information that we are taking in and also the way in which we are putting it out. That is, how aware are we of our language? Are we trying to beautify it? Are we careful with what we're saying? Are we using Grail speech or are we using Hail speech or something like this? Are we refusing to communicate with people because they wronged us? Or are we willing to speak our truth and to be heard and to also listen at the same time? I mean, this is all essential to the nature of nonviolent communication, but also true healing. And Mercury does relate to healing as well. Even though his caduceus is a bit different from the rod of Asclepius, they do look the same and they have similar functions, and they are borrowed by many institutions in the world mistakenly. And so we know that Mercury is here in early Aries, the first decan of Aries, and find it in your chart. It'll also include Chiron and Venus as well. And if it were to relate at all to the tarot, it would have to relate to the magician. I mean, in essence, Hermes is the magician. But this phase of the cycle very much relates to the first card of the major arcana. And one of the major themes that has hit me throughout this cycle is actually a deeper dive into the tarot, thanks to Hodorowski. Thanks to a dear student of mine down in Miami for exciting me about this man. And I'm now reading the way of the tarot, and it's just completely changing not just my relationship to the cards, but my relationship to astrology as well. It's deepening everything. And so if the magician could speak, he might say, I am in the present. Whatever action I wish to undertake, it is now time to commit. My entire focus is seated in the decisions I make at this moment. Do as I do. See all the moments when you are not yourself, when you are not living in the here and now. That is the moment of eternity and the sight of the infinite. So what are you waiting for? Drop those useless burdens that are the remainders of the past and fear of the future. I embody the energy called consciousness. I am absolutely present here in this body, among other bodies, within a given space and time. And again, this is if the magician, or this is if Hermes is speaking to us. I am not separate from my surroundings. I am aware of the breathtaking multiplicity of everything that is. I invite you to experience this inventory with me. Be aware of all of the spaces, of all matter, trees, planets, galaxies, atoms, cells. If I am aware, I am not merely a limited mind inside a giving form. I become the totality of the divine work. So how does one become conscious? It is simple. You do not have any past within, nor any future. Nothing but one moment, the cosmic moment. You should break once and for all with all the deviations of the ego, the old wounds. You must detach yourself from all plans, all suffering, all programming. Only then will the light of consciousness arrive. If you are living for yourself in the moment, death does not exist. You have suffered losses in the past, and you may suffer more in the future. But here and now, nothing is lost. Perhaps you aspire to perfect yourself, to improve your life, but in the moment, there are no aspirations. You are there with all your potential. That is, if the magician spoke from the way of the tarot. And even though he already has made his pass with Chiron, the conversation is over. There's always that integration period. Just think of it as a deep conversation with a teacher. How long does it take to fully realize the implications of what was transmitted into you? And so that's where we're at with Mercury at the moment, and hopefully taking in the benefits of the good medicine that Chiron served up. But now it's time for Venus to be involved. She's making the long trek up to Chiron's cave on Pelion. And it seems maybe that she needs a pep talk, some sort of a transmission from Firelight and good counsel, because her heart is moving pretty fast. And again, find the 3 of them in your chart. Where are they? Because what I'm about to do here is what I know so many of you love when I do it, but to do my crack at horoscopes, but by using specific transits like this one. So the stellium between Mercury, Venus, and Chiron. So know your ascendant, because that's how I'm going to read it. And I'm going to have just a few words to say for all 12 possibilities of where this is happening in your chart. And so hopefully as well, Mercury himself can help bring some magic dust to the words, and also it falls really well inside of you, and it helps with what you are needing at this moment, because these teachings from Chiron, I mean, he's still getting used to being in Aries, and I think that a lot of the ideas or the feels that are coming up in us are still trying to find where to really place that taproot in the dark soil of our imaginations. And we got to continue that deep listening. We got to continue figuring out, essentially, like, what is it that's happening here? Like, what is the teaching? And it's always there. We might not be able to see it yet, but hopefully, in this little segment, something will resonate. And another idea that we can bring in is from Raven Caldera in his Myth Astrology. And like, here's his take. He relates Mercury in Aries to Horus. And so he says, Mercury in Aries is a fast thinker and covers a lot of ground while others are still struggling with the first idea. Now, of course, he's talking about the natal chart here, but we can apply it to the transit as well and how it's influencing us. Like a hawk, he sails from one broad subject to another. But like the prematurely born Horus, he tends to speak too soon and too little forethought. Often, he doesn't know what he's actually thinking until he works it out loud. His speech can be fairly aggressive in its style. There is often a certain pattern of rapid fire, staccato bursts of words like a machine gun. And he is not above combatively interrupting. Mercury in Aries is not afraid of arguing and sometimes even enjoys it. So even with that snippet, it can give us an idea of the feel in the collective at the moment. It is springtime up here, and there's also this rushing that I can see and I recognize a little bit in myself. And the way I've noticed it actually is in people being really terrible right now at responding to emails and texts. And I'm for some reason like really sensitive to it. And like when people don't respond, I'm not talking like in an hour, I'm talking like don't respond. You got to understand, like if this is happening to you, that there is a certain pace at the moment, and it is very easy to forget the smaller details and just like go ahead with your own project or go ahead with the bustle of life or whatever it is. And so what is the remedy to working with such explosive fire? Meditation. Meditation is the remedy to pretty much everything. But it's so important, especially in this Mercury cycle, not to get ahead of ourselves and to have that moment every single morning and every evening before you go to bed, just to kind of allow the contents of mind to fall away and the whole rhythm of your mentality to slow down a little bit and just kind of feel your nervous system get more into this gamma flow that's in the background. That's a binaural beat sound in the background from Corey Allen. And so what I want to do with, now that we've kind of acquainted ourselves a little bit with Hermes and also this place in Aries that Chiron and Venus are involved with, that we can go through these ascendants and see how it lands for all of you. And so we'll begin with you, Aries rising, with the natural chart. Before plotting courses on the map or scanning the horizon for possible destinations, there is a check-in that is needed. How do you feel in your body? Do you like what you see in the mirror? Are you a warrior? An Athena? What's holding you back from accomplishing what you know you want? It's something like the will, a desire so hot it can melt through any obstacle. Place the target within yourself and only stop for a breather when you absolutely have to. Get claimed by yourself. For those with Taurus on the rise, taking shots in the dark may seem fruitless, but everything lands somewhere eventually. It just takes time for seeds to grow. No better time than around Easter. And no different than the fool who steps over the precipice, trusting in something. You too are faced with a similar void. If it calls for a reason. Follow it. There's only one way to find out. If Gemini is ascending, the amount of healing possible between you and your tribe has come to the surface. Whether it's an issue which requires mediation or a tug towards actually meeting your tribe, it needs to be addressed. Mercury reminds us of the healing power of communication. Chiron reminds us of the ancient wisdom available to our communities. Venus shows what happens to our hearts with communion. Don't be afraid to be seen. Go on, put yourself out there. Commune. If Cancer was in the East when you were born, the world wants something from you. A contribution, an act, something to move it, to move us. Whatever it may be, it's been stirring in you for eons. It's time for the stirring to stop and the ladling to begin. Give us a taste of what you've got. Embody the Great Mother. If Leo was ascending with a roar the moment that you were born, the call to adventure may be like a siren in your ear these days. But it doesn't need to be an external one. Flights are expensive. Gas ain't cheap. And plus, it can be terribly ungrounding. Best to wait for next April when we all get to go to Crete together. Wink, wink. For now, it can be an internal one, if that's all you can muster. Getting more acquainted with your own path, with the way, deepening your practice, tracking the trails the hawk follows with your breathing and your overly active imagination. Active imagination. If your ascendant is Virgo, a lantern has been lit in the underneath. Parts of your psyche are being glimpsed like never before. Between the shadows and the dancing amber light, you can spot it. Oh, that. The pickled head of that person who crossed you so many moons ago. Oh, and that. A journal which contains the contents of your darkest secrets. Ah, that too. The earliest horrors of your life. Being helpless on the couch in the early days when your parents were fighting it out. It's all there to be worked with. Take the medicine and keep working. If the scales were attempting balance on the rise the moment you were born, then Eros is a beautiful thing. It's also a terrifying one. When the arrow dipped in the weirdest of nectars pierces the skin, it's all over from there. They become all you can think about. You never knew you were a poet, but here you are, singing to the moon. You hadn't thought of writing a song in ages, but here it comes, like a torrent of chirping. Be careful out there, though. The lady who rules you is headed towards Chiron's cave. She knows best. Listen in on this conversation. You may hear something critical for the chapters that are unfolding. If your ascendant is Scorpio, I heard a couple stories recently from folks who share your ascendant. One was talking about turning lead into gold. The other took iboga to address the deepest kinds of healing. I think they were paying attention. It's not that you need to go on a 24-hour plant journey to see the reels of your life flashing before you, yet there is something akin that is needed. To turn depression's heavy lead into shimmering gold, there is always work to be done. Get excited about it. It's time to turn all of your enemies into your teachers. Sag rising. fires ablaze. Many irons are likely in the fire. The excitement of completion in the next phase is imminent. It's important to pace yourself, though. Don't get so far ahead you lose the moment. Don't release what has yet to be baked properly. Sit in your most prized creations for a bit. Like a daddy penguin commits for months to his egg. Sit tight for a moment longer. Capricorn Ascendant. Home is indeed where the heart is. But where is home? If you have yet to allow a place to grab hold of you, be open to such a moment. If there are family constellations that have gone corrupt, try to bring back their light. Ancestry work, climbing the family tree, eating from its fruits. There are stories you may have been told that you've never been told. Search for them, because they are searching you. If water was being poured in the east as you were born, Aquarius is your ascendant, and I say I am haunted and also mesmerized by the notion there are no original ideas. That they've already been thought up years ago, or at the very moment you had your own brilliant idea. No matter, it's still an exciting thought. Be different than the others. Add your own panache to them. Use it in ways of healing to inspiring others with it. If it's a story you have gathered, share it often. And finally, Pisces Ascendant. The question: how the hell am I going to make a living in this world I can actually stand behind? Another: how to heal my relationship to money? Good questions. Ones we all should be asking. And for you, these days, the good medicine has arrived. The hawk soars over your desert and sees an opportunity. Jason sails towards the fleece, and you are on board. It is a moment of mythic grace. Take it. You may only have this chance once. So, just some ideas. Of course, it is infinitely more complicated than that, but I know how much many of you love that. It's a form of my seva, my service to all of you who listen to this podcast, to do this from time to time, to do a solo podcast and offer something like a horoscope. And if one of them, like for you, if it didn't land well, give it a week. Come back and listen to it again. Or I'll put it in a post this week as well so it can be read. I'll edit it a little bit and come back to it. See if by the time Venus crosses Chiron and both her and Mercury have learned their lessons, like how it might resonate at that point. But I know we all have our own filters. Whatever is coming through from Hermes has to travel the tunnels and the wild channels of our minds before they reach our mouths and our fingers. So that was my offering and what came through for the three of them. And here is Star Slingers. I don't agree with all of what this interesting character from the UK is about to spit, but it is an interesting track, and I think it is in stride with what the three of them are thinking about and how they're influencing us at the moment. Enjoy.
No matter who you are, no matter what you do, no matter who your audience is, 30% will love it, and 30% will hate it, and 30% won't care. Stick with the people who love you and don't spend a single second on the rest. Life will be better that way. When you get in the mud with a pig, you get dirty, and the pig gets happy. Forget purpose, it's okay to be happy without one. The quest for a single purpose has ruined many lives. Luck is created by the prepared. I have lots of ideas, how do I pick the right one? Execute on as many as possible. The right idea will pick you. Diversification is everything. You get past this by having lots of that's. We're taught at an early age that we're not good enough, that someone else has to choose us in order for us to be what? Blessed, rich, certified, legitimized, educated, partnership material. Remember this phrase: get paid, get laid, lose weight, because those are the three things people will pay for. One candle can light 1,000 other candles and still remain lit itself. Be that candle. Only worry about your own happiness, which doesn't have to be limited by anyone else's stupidity, unless you allow it to be. If something's not a hell yeah, then it's a no. If you can't walk away from a negotiation, then you aren't negotiating. You're just working out the terms of your slavery. Study the history of the form you want to master. Out of silence comes the greatest creativity, not when we are rushing and panicking. Ultimately, mastery is about connecting the dots of many fields. If you don't choose yourself, someone else will.
There's an old story that is found in the Corpus Hermeticum called the Vision of Hermes, about the encounter with Hermes Trismegistus and Pyamandrus, a dragon made of light. It's the type of scene that leaves quite the impression on somebody. And there's a version of it that is found in the Secret Teachings of All Ages by Manly P. Hall. And I thought that I'd read a couple pieces of it just to give you an idea of the types of encounters Hermes has been through, but also as wonderful transmissions, perennial teachings for us and God, especially on Resurrection Day. What a moment to be reminded of moments like these that are always happening somewhere in the universe. So Hermes, while wandering in a rocky and desolate place, gave himself over to meditation and prayer. Good practices. Following the secret instructions of the temple, he gradually freed his higher consciousness from the bondage of his bodily senses, and thus released, his divine nature revealed to him the mysteries of the transcendental spheres. He beheld a figure, terrible and awe-inspiring. It was the great dragon, with wings stretching across the sky and light streaming in all directions from its body. The great dragon called Hermes by name and asked him why he thus meditated upon the world mystery. Terrified by the spectacle, Hermes prostrated himself before the dragon, beseeching it to reveal its identity. The great creature answered that it was Pyamandrus, the mind of the universe, the creative intelligence, the absolute emperor of all. Pyamandrus could also be related to as Osiris, according to some. Hermes then besought Pyamandrus to disclose the nature of the universe and the constitution of the gods. The dragon acquiesced, bidding Trismegistus hold its image in his mind. And so immediately the form of Pyamandrus changed. Where it had stood, there was a glorious and pulsating radiance. This light was the spiritual nature of the great dragon itself. Hermes was raised in the midst of this divine effulgence, and the universe of material things faded from his consciousness. Presently, a great darkness descended, and expanding swallowed up the light. Everything was troubled, but Hermes swirled a mysterious watery substance which gave the froth a smoke-like vapor. The air was filled with inarticulate moanings and sighings which seemed to come from the light swallowed up by the darkness. His mind told Hermes that the light was the form of the spiritual universe and that the swirling darkness, which had engulfed it, represented material substance. A truth that I think we all know, right? That material gain is not going to bring us happiness. That it's through love and light and transcending thoughts and prayer and meditation and such practices that are going to actually bring us the everlasting happiness that we're looking for. That no lover, no amount of money, no amount of astrology information is ever going to bring it. And to see it take place with such an encounter between two of my favorite things, Hermes and dragons, makes me happy. It's a way that I will always, in a way, metaphorically talk about this. And so at the end, it goes on and on and on. It's an amazing thing, and I recommend finding any version of it that you can. But in concluding this exposition of the vision, Hermes wrote, "The sleep of the body is the sober watchfulness of the mind, and the shutting of my eyes reveals that true light. My silence is filled with budding life and hope, and is full of good. My words are the blossoms of fruit of the tree of my soul, for this is the faithful account of what I received from my true mind." That is Pyamandras, the great dragon, the Lord of the Word, through whom I became inspired by God with the truth. Since that day, my mind has been ever with me. In my own soul it hath been given to the world. The Word is reason, and reason hath redeemed me. For which cause, with all my soul and all my strength, I give praise and blessing unto God the Father, the life and the light, and the eternal good. Pyamandras, the great dragon. What lovely reminders on Resurrection Day, right? And it's what we're doing here, I think, in tracking Hermes in the cycle. I think some have been frustrated, especially in the class, with it's complicated. Like, what am I really looking for in my own practices? Like, what am I tracking? You're tracking your thoughts. You're tracking the content of your ideas. You're looking for the big ones like that, like the ultimate encounter with something like Pyamandras or the great mind to help release you from suffering. That's kind of what we're tracking with Mercury. And then the subtleties are like, well, like I shared earlier, for me, it always happens with a given idea or a theme in my own personal life. And so this cycle, again, it started in Pisces, and I didn't even call it in. I didn't know, aside from some personal things I wanted to work with, what idea or content that was going to befall me during this cycle. But it happened, as it always does, in perfect fashion. And the teachings this time around have a lot to do with Alejandro Jodorowsky, psychomagic, the tarot, and I'm just fascinated with the guy. Like, I said this in the circle in New York City, and it's so true. Like, when you encounter someone and you have this feeling of, oh God, like, why didn't someone show me this earlier? Like, why did I spend so many years, like in my case, like with the tarot, messing around with the Thoth deck? Not that it's bad, and thank you so many people who have helped me understand that Thoth, or not Thoth, but Crowley isn't evil like the media wanted us to believe. Like, I was brainwashed around that. But I love those cards, but like there's something that never really fully transmitted what I needed from them. And Jodorowsky, it's just my language. And what I find is it's often the case when people have a combination of three things, interestingly enough, which is a trifecta of a Buddhist practice, usually Zen, interest in shamanism, and then also are poets. And so some of my favorite people on the planet have that combination, like Joan Halifax Roshi, like Dale Pendle, like so many of the people I quote on this podcast have that combination, as Jodorowsky does. And those are my greatest interests. I mean, throw in astrology in there too. And that's like the composition of what Hermes has really built within my own imagination, is like that kind of temple for ideas and mental practices. And so the question then is, what is yours? Do you know what that looks like when you shut your eyes? Do you know how to surround yourself with the good ideas as reminders to always be working on your mind, to always be diligent with your speech, to always be as best as possible in some sort of alignment? And so praise Hermes. Find him in your chart, Chiron and Venus as well, natally, by transit, by progression, because he is always trying to teach you something, always there with you. And so we say, praise Hermes. So again, if you want to be a part of this wonderful experiment, be on the journey with us, and work towards the idea of getting free readings every single month and supporting this podcast and helping make it better, allowing just the whole cycle of creative juju in life to kind of spiral amongst all of us, you can go to patreon.com/AdamSummer, and even $1 helps to get me to the next goal, where I'll be unleashing the next free reading every month. And then there's also going to be the second Mercury class this month on the 27th, the Parlor, another patron-only podcast. There's always so much that is happening on there. And so patreon.com/AdamSummer. And if you don't have $1, totally understandable. On your podcast app that you're listening to this on, or on iTunes, just leave some stars or a review. And that actually does a lot of good as well for the podcast. 2 bits of news that are happening soon. The Burlington, Vermont Astrology Circle, where we're going to be exploring Chiron in depth, is going to be on the 28th at 6 p.m. Message me, email me for the address. And this is also true for the Montreal Circle that has been added. That's going to be on May 19th. And so both places want to keep their addresses disclosed. So I understand that. So just email me or personal message me if you want to come to these circles in Vermont or in Montreal. This podcast is brought to you by Solar Fire. The animated buy wheel. You can just let that baby go into motion, and you can watch Mercury run every single cycle in your lifetime. Just watch it. Just watch it spin. But be careful, because such time travel can cause nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, and a bit of idealistic thinking about your future. So it is amazing, Solar Fire is, but that could be a little bit of a challenge. I'm kind of kidding. I do highly recommend Solar Fire. Soon it will be on a Mac. Even if you buy it now, they'll give you the DMG for the Mac when it comes out. So use promo code SOMA to get 15% off of the program. This podcast is also brought to you by Four Sigmatic. I've been told by the Magi himself that there is no better way in these wildly changing times to adapt than by bringing medicinal mushrooms into your life, especially the ones that are found at foursigmatic.com. I recommend starting with the 10 mushroom blend elixir. Cover all your bases. Just make sure you get loaded up in a good way, and then you can start choosing specifically. If you want to live forever, go with the reishi. If you want to be the smartest person on the planet or your block, go with the lion's mane. If you want to run faster than the Flash, go with the cordyceps. Mushrooms are amazing, and use Soma on their site to get 10% off any of their products. If you go to my site, holstoheavens.com, that's where you sign up for readings and also purchase classes. There's a lot of content on there about Mercury. If you are intrigued by this podcast, we've done part 1 of the journey so far with this cycle. We're going to be doing part 2 on the 27th, and there's going to be 2 more as well. And so even though you would be joining up later, you can still catch up. No worries on that. So you go to holstoheavens.com. And then finally, I am going to leave you with a song, again, by Trevor Hall. And I know I use Trevor a lot, but Hermes is into it. He loves Trevor, I guess. And this song is just so appropriate because it's called the Green Mountain State, and I'm in the Green Mountain State, and I'm doing something very similar that he was doing when he wrote this song, which is retreating into these beautiful old mountains. That's what I'm doing right now. I got a couple horses I'm taking care of, a senile cat, got a sauna and a cold plunge and a jacuzzi that looks out to the stars, and I'm almost 10 days into it, and I feel like a different man. I don't know if that shows up in my voice, but I do. I feel completely transformed by this place that's called the Green Mountain State, that's called Vermont. My specific location will not be disclosed, but much gratitude to everything and everyone that I have met here so far, and also this song by Trevor that really relates to the magic of this area of the world. And so enjoy. Thank you for making it this far. Long days and pleasant nights, my friends. Be well, be kind, and I will talk with you next, I believe, on the topic of the Forever 27 Club. Hope you're not 27. I'm just kidding. Thank you again for listening to the podcast. Sorry I wasn't able to share the song. YouTube is a bit more strict than the podcast apps. So if you'd like to listen to the whole show, go over to Spotify, the podcast app, SoundCloud, or really wherever podcasts are found. This is Tree Theater. Ciao.